WTHR, Channel 13, Indianapolis. Live from the heart of Indiana, Tom Cochrun and Ryder, Bob Gregory's AccuWeather, Don Hein Sports Final, and Ronny Duncan Sports Spotlight. This is News Center 13 tonight. The news starts now.
This really is a disaster. It's a disaster feared for decades that has become a reality in San Francisco. A massive earthquake buckled bridges. Some spans like dominoes, and the streets of San Francisco tonight are clogged with traffic and crumbled buildings. Cracking roads, ruptured gas mains sparking massive fires, a danger that halted the World Series by the Bay. A city plunged into darkness, but for the fires and portable lights. The AP is reporting at least 60 people are dead, many more are injured.
And live from Bloomington now, IU seismologists are still registering the jolt of this quake. Good evening, Indiana. We are going to update you on the quake in California and its effects here in Indiana before returning to live national coverage.
Well, more information is being known by each passing hour, but now the whole nation and the whole world knows how it started. It was rush hour, 5 o'clock, when the quake hit. Game 3 of the World Series at Candlestick was starting.
Andy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
Tell you what, we're having It threw me over my son into the aisle. People started screaming.
Almost immediately, the city by the bay went dark. Streets cracked. Buildings, many erected before the new earthquake standards 10 years ago, collapsed. A residential area downtown, 8 blocks from Fisherman's Wharf, erupted in flames when gas lines burst. A chunk of the Bay Bridge collapsed. Other bridge collapses crushed cars and the people in them.
The victims, as I mentioned to you, range from various horrible ways of dying. It's just awful.
The quake, as strong as the one to hit Armenia, shook buildings 200 miles from its Santa Cruz epicenter, collapsing part of a shopping center there. Gas is leaking in many areas. Power and phone outages are widespread, and best estimates have it disrupted for at least 72 hours. When the stands shook at Candlestick, postponement of Series Game 3 was swift.
There's been a power failure, therefore the game will be postponed.
We got a packed house here. There was some, there could have been catastrophe here.
All of a sudden it hit. I didn't know where I was for 5 seconds. I still feel like throwing up right now.
The quake closed San Francisco Airport. President Bush says tonight the federal government is prepared to help. Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner is on his way and will meet with Vice President Dan Quayle, who is in San Diego tonight.
Despite rocking buildings and falling debris, people in the downtown area of San Francisco remained calm during the quake. Here's the situation described by a reporter who was on the scene.
People just stood on the street corners dazed, and many just went into Union Square. You can see what traffic is like down in the financial district. The emergency services in this town were really operating. As you can see, police were just racing through town, putting up these caution signs to keep people from walking under parts of these fallen buildings. But as you can see, without the signs, they were continuing to do that. As night fell, things became a little bit scarier down there, especially on the waterfront, as people tried to make their way down toward the ferry building. You can see this is the City Court building where all of these bricks came down from the side of this wall. One gentleman told me that these two buildings literally separated and then came back together. And then you've got the foliage of bricks down to the street. It just sheared off a tree. And luckily, you know, it was after 4 o'clock, so there's no parking along most of these streets. So that's why there were not really that many cars in that area. Bricks just rained down on people, but no one said they were seriously hurt. People were still dazed. Many went into bars and did what San Franciscans do.
The last major earthquake struck Soviet Armenia earlier this year. There in January, thousands were killed and entire buildings crumbled to the ground. The quake near the Soviet Union's Central Asian border caused a landslide that buried homes in a mountain village. That quake estimated to register 6.9 on the Richter scale. That is a smaller size quake than the one that rocked the West Coast tonight. Well, there are scientists here in Indiana who are monitoring the events in California tonight. We switch live now via SkyPass satellite to Bloomington to talk with seismologist Dr. Michael Hamburger. Mike, it is good to talk to you again this evening. With a quake this large, will there be what is known as a ring of fire, that is, an effect on other fault lines?
Well, typically when there's an earthquake of this size, there's a series of aftershocks that continue in the days to weeks following. Typically, the aftershocks are significantly smaller than the 6.5 to 6.9 main shock that occurred today, but we can expect more shakes coming up in the next few days.
Well, compare this one to the one that hit Armenia. We are told that the aftershocks were just as devastating as the original hit of 6.9.
Well, in fact, in terms of the size of the two earthquakes, this is very much comparable to the size of the earthquake that destroyed Spitak and Leninakan in Armenia last December. One of the major differences between the two earthquakes is the quality of construction in San Francisco Bay Area versus Soviet Armenia. And in fact, looking at it in an optimistic way, perhaps the relatively small amount of damage here compared to Armenia is related to the quality of our construction effort there.
Michael, I would like for you to answer a very basic question. Tell us what an earthquake is, how it actually occurs.
Well, of course, that's the most complicated question, but basically an earthquake is the response of very slowly building up geological forces in the Earth's crust that build up to the point where the stress reaches the breaking strength of the rock, and when it suddenly ruptures, then seismic waves, just very much like sound waves, emanate away from the source, and it's those vibrations that cause the damage that we associate with earthquakes.
Do you have good data there tonight on what happened in California tonight?
Well, we've recorded this earthquake quite well. We have an extremely sensitive seismograph station here in Indiana, and anytime there's an earthquake of this size virtually anywhere in the world, we record it here at our seismograph in Bloomington. The earthquake was large enough, though, that it was really almost at the edge of the recording range of our instruments, so that our pens were pegged from side to side when the earthquake was going.
Okay, we'll do more follow-up later. Dr. Michael Hamburger, IU seismologist, thank you very much for joining us via SkyPass satellite tonight.
Thank you.
Well, Tom, even though tonight's quake is thousands of miles away, Hoosiers are not foreign to earthquakes. Bob Gregory joins us now from the Weather Center. Bob, it was not that long ago.
Really, it wasn't. Unfortunately for us, we just have the experience of the tremors to remember, and that was just a couple of years ago.
And all of a sudden, the house began to shake. And I got up and asked my wife what was going on. She said, I don't know. I said, I believe it's an earthquake.
That was June 10th, 1987, the last time an earthquake was felt in central Indiana. This was a moderate quake, centered in Lawrenceville, but felt through Indiana and in 11 Midwestern states. Just 3 days later, another quake occurred in the Midwest. This was centered near New Madrid, Missouri. There are some scientists that believe the Midwest is also a great danger spot due to population density should a major quake develop in the New Madrid fault line. All we'll do here in the Midwest is watch and wait, as they'll do in the far western part of the country.
All right. Thank you, Bob Gregory. We'll check back with you later for our weather. Tom.
An Indianapolis man visiting San Francisco spoke with us just moments ago and described what he saw and felt when the quake hit tonight.
Incredible, because they are very relaxed, they're very calm, people are looking out for each other, there's been no feeling of panic of any kind, everybody's trying to help everybody else. Probably the most interesting thing is the fact that so many people here are tourists who speak different languages, and so you hear conversations going on all around you in German or Swedish or Spanish as people trying to interpret and relay the information so that everybody knows what's happening. It's really quite relaxed and quite peaceful considering the circumstances.
At Indianapolis International Airport, anxious relatives wait for news about friends and loved ones. Mark Spain joins us now with a live report. Mark, what's going on out there?
And news of the devastating quake spread fast. It even got airborne, taking many of those on flights out of San Francisco completely by surprise. At about 9:30 tonight, United Flight 326, originating out of San Francisco, landed here at the airport. Passengers told me flight attendants were visibly shaken after the captain came on and told them what had happened on the ground shortly after takeoff. Some of those on board have families living in the Bay Area and panicked when the news reached them.
The captain said he's looking for the World Series game. And he says, we can't find it. And then he said, there's been a major earthquake and collapsed the Bay Bridge, and everybody just started panicking. I have some friends that took me across that bridge to come to the airport, so I'm going to go call.
She said everything's an absolute chaotic mess. Everything's thrown every which way in her apartment. But she's okay.
She's okay. What are you going to try and do? As you can imagine, some very, very shaken passengers coming off some of those flights. One of those passengers who just got off a flight out of San Francisco is Sonia Rose. She joins me live to talk about what happened right before you got on the plane.
Well, we had somewhat of a delay in San Francisco, and as boarding the aircraft, the jetaway, normally being right up to the door of entry, as I stepped from the jetaway to the aircraft itself, there was a tremendous thud, and I stopped and went back and said, this is rather unusual. And the girl next to me says, it seems as though we're having an earthquake. And so we proceeded onto the aircraft and was able to close the doors and taxi down the runway, and there was a delay on the tarmac for a while.
At any point, did anyone panic?
No, there was never any panic at all. In fact, we didn't know what was happening. We really didn't understand. I thought possibly an aircraft had hit the building. And I said, I'd look out to see if an aircraft had hit the building. And that was not the case. And it was not explainable. I'm from Indiana. I've lived here all of my life and not accustomed to earthquakes. Didn't know.
Do you have family or friends back there in San Francisco?
I have a group of people, some of which will still be there. We were there with championship racing teams for the Laguna Seca final race of the season, and I'm a group director for them. Okay. So there's a few people, yes.
Okay, we hope they're all safe tonight, and we thank you for joining us live tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's the situation here at the airport tonight. A lot of shaken passengers after experiencing some problems on the ground there, but they're safe here tonight and probably saying a few prayers.
Absolutely, and a reminder that many Hoosiers are worried about friends and loved ones out there, and phone service may be disrupted for as long as 72 hours, so be patient, and we'll all hope for the best. Tom?
Well, if California's medical emergency system could not take care of the wounded, Indianapolis would be prepared to help. That is because Indianapolis was the site last spring of a disaster drill that simulated that exact scenario. The drill was presented in a News Center 13 documentary.
In this case, the big one is a massive California earthquake. The scenario for this exercise will be the first test of transporting victims long distance between cities. The National Disaster Medical System, NDMS, is the coordinated response being readied should a major catastrophe ever overwhelm a single state. It is planning for the unthinkable. On this day, in this drill, the unthinkable has occurred. In the West, medical systems are overloaded, and Indiana becomes the first line of treatment.
How will the disaster come? Will it be an earthquake? Will it be a tornado? Will it be an industrial accident? You don't know. All you have to do is to be able to plan as best you can with the resources that you have on hand and hope that you're going to be effective in responding. I think we could respond to a catastrophic accident should one come this evening.
Take it easy.
The NDMS plan would mobilize area doctors, EMTs, hospitals, mental health workers, and the National Guard. If needed, Indianapolis is ready.
And finally, amid the destruction in Northern California comes word that the earthquake may delay tomorrow's planned liftoff of the space shuttle. The Atlantis did not begin its mission scheduled for today because of bad weather in Florida. Well, tonight, NASA reports the earthquake damaged an Air Force station in Sunnyvale, California. That station is supposed to control the flight of the Galileo spacecraft. The liftoff tomorrow was planned for noon Indianapolis time, and there is still no word yet on what will happen with the World Series. We'll have the latest on that as it becomes available. Recapping now, that deadly, disastrous earthquake that has rocked the San Francisco Bay Area tonight has claimed at least 60 lives. The quake registered 7 on the Richter scale, a major quake. The violent rocking brought down chunks of the Bay Bridge, major highways, and commercial and residential buildings. Phone service and all utilities are crippled and may stay that way for at least 72 hours. Fires sparked by escaping natural gas are burning out of control in some parts of the city, as you see here. San Francisco International Airport is closed, and of course tonight's World Series game slated for Candlestick Park is canceled. Again, at least 60 reported dead. At the end of this newscast, News Center 13 will return live to reports from NBC. We will stay on the air all night to bring you the latest on the quake.
And still ahead on News Center 13 tonight, our Money Watch special report and Bob Gregory's AccuWeather forecast.
And Frankfurt officials think they know now who set part of the town on fire. That story coming up. Stay with us.
Just a reminder, the Village Pantry sells 3,000 different things. And lottery tickets, too.
It's a lottery! In today's hotter running engines, wear is a greater problem than ever before. Oil breakdown can shorten the life of vital engine parts. That's why there's Castrol. Castrol provides maximum protection against viscosity and thermal breakdown. So use Castrol, because driving today can be a grind. Castrol, engineered for today's smaller cars.
Castrol GTX, now available at all Val stores.
Wish that you were here.
Yo, Beef, you coming?
Nah,
the ladies are gonna be crushed.
you know I wish I could be there. Miles away, so much to say.
Beef.
Tell your mom I said hi. Not so long distance from the Indiana Belle.
Isn't it worth the call?
Buying 35mm film is never easy.
I'm confused.
It's all very simple.
There's 100.
For inside and out.
Unless it's too dark or too bright.
And then change to 400.
Or you could push it to 800.
If you don't mind the gray.
But it is faster.
Depending on the conditions.
Well, then you use 1,000.
Of course.
Change to 400?
Introducing 35mm Polaroid One Film. With one film, you can get beautiful pictures in bright light, low light, inside and out. New 35mm One Film. For beautiful pictures, the choice is easy.
A Clinton County woman is under arrest tonight, charged with arson in a multi-million-dollar blaze that wiped out a chunk of downtown Frankfurt. David McAnally has our report.
For nearly 2 months, it's been a mystery. Who started the blaze that wiped out storefronts in the town square? The August 24th fire caused $2 to $3 million damage. 5 businesses were destroyed, and some residents burned out of their apartments. No one was hurt, no suspects caught. But after a month-and-a-half-long investigation, police now have a suspect. She's 27-year-old Patricia A. Coy, a local housewife who reportedly has had trouble with police before. She's now held on $75,000 bail. Meanwhile, some of the burned-out businesses have rebuilt, like this smoke shop. Its owner is relieved a suspect is under arrest.
I'm glad that it's all over with. Hopefully we'll find out what the motive was.
Officials will explain Coy's alleged role in the case tomorrow. David McAnally, News Center 13 tonight.
The State Lottery Commission tonight is dealing with its first apparent forgery case. A 78-year-old woman today tried to cash in what she thought would be a $500 winning ticket. But one of the 3 sets of 500 marked on the ticket was a forgery, a $5,000 figure made to resemble $500. The store has handled 2 other forged tickets in the last few days. The Lottery Commission says merchants who redeem the tickets must absorb that loss. Lottery Commissioner Chief Jack Crawford says merchants should check a code number on all the tickets to make sure they are legitimate. The 78-year-old, by the way, was not arrested. She says she just found that ticket.
On our Money Watch tonight, prices are coming down, and a car phone could be in your future. Tonight, Steve Crowley's special report looks at sensible advice on rentals that ring.
Okay with my lunchie?
So you're not one of the 3.2 million people racking up calls on a cellular phone now? Well, chances are you will be soon. Today, the average car phone sells for only $500. Portables are more expensive. Still too much money? Why not rent a truly portable phone to see how much use you'll get out of it, to see how convenient it is, to find out if it improves your lifestyle and saves time and money.
Based on the popularity of portable phones, renting has become real popular. Hotel guests, airport rent-a-car, those type of places now have found the need, their clients asking for portable phones for the day, for 2 days, or even as much as a week.
Whether we're traveling or at home, we might need a portable phone for a few days only. For example, architects, contractors, engineers, and salespeople often find themselves without instant access to a phone. Now, vacationers might need one on a camping trip, for example. Well, this is why rentals are so popular. Buying a portable means shelling out $800 and up. Try one out. Renting costs about $5 a day. Airtime runs a little high, though, from $1 to $1.25 a minute, so keep your calls short. And expect to leave a credit card imprint with a security deposit. Before renting any portable phone, make sure cellular service is available where you're planning to make calls from. Remember, if it's a business trip, your employer just might pick up the tab. In the long run, though, if you decide you need it, buy it. I'm Steve Crowley for Newscenter 13 tonight.
And if you have a car phone and you see news happening, call star 13. That is our Newscenter 13 hotline. Still ahead on this special edition of Newscenter 13 tonight, Bob Gregory has the AccuWeather forecast for the remainder of the week.
Changes in store. And in sports, Don Hein reports on a new Colts linebacker getting another chance in the NFL.
You have an outstanding young man.
We listen to Light Rock 97 for one reason. It's not too hard and it's not too soft.
Isn't that 2 reasons?
And they talk less, too.
3 reasons. Light Rock 97 plays more of the music we want to hear.
Phil Collins, Whitney Houston, Chicago.
They don't play that screaming hard stuff like some stations do.
It's not wimpy or boring either.
It's perfect to listen to all day. Definitely not too hard and not too soft.
Listen to Light Rock 97 FM, WENS.
It's not too hard and it's
Not
not
too
too soft.
soft.
And they talk less, too.
Flying to Detroit on business?
With 6 daily nonstop flights to New Detroit City Airport, flying Southwest Airlines is like having your own company plane.
Live, wherever news to you is happening, SkyPath Satellite reports exclusively on News Center 13. Tomorrow's news, now.
If your greatest luxury is having all the options, you'll feel beautiful in the world of Estee Lauder. Visit your Estee Lauder beauty advisor, and with your choice of $12.50 or more, we'll treat you to this gift, including Knowing Body Cream and 2 lipsticks. Estee Lauder.
It's a beautiful world.
This gift is yours through October 28th at Lazarus.
There's a good reason why during fall harvest time in central Indiana, they call it fall. That's exactly what happens to the prices of new Chevys from your local Chevy Geo dealer. With cash back, the new Luminous price has fallen $750. And with cash back, remaining 89 full-size pickup prices have fallen $500. Or choose reduced interest rates as low as 6.9%. It's definitely fall and time to harvest, but only at your local Chevy dealer. In central Indiana, we drive Chevy.
Weather watchers across Indiana are members of Bob Gregory's AccuWeather team, which carries the AMS seal of approval.
You can see your breath out there tonight. We went from way above normal to way below.
Yeah, we're going to stay there for a while, too, before we get on the plus side. As a matter of fact, updating some earlier information, conditions look a little more favorable now that Indiana may see some of that white stuff on Thursday. Give you our reasons why here in just a moment. For Indianapolis today, though, 56 our top mark, 42 so far. That 1400th was the moisture today now. That combined with 1 2/3 inches yesterday put us on the plus side by almost a ½ inch. 42 now at the Weather Center under overcast skies with 48 here in the Weather Center. Make it 44 on our thermometer. Humidity at 86%, north wind at 15, our pressure 30.27, and it continues to rise. There's, you see the records for this date. Now, where's the cold air going to filter in tonight? Well, you can see the coldest air through the plain states down into Missouri and parts of eastern Kansas. They'll be looking at some very frosty temperatures. Make out Indiana underneath here. Get your bearings. Lake Michigan in this area. Northern part of Indiana. Here the cloud shield, and underneath this, mostly clouds for us, but clearing skies and much colder air will be moving in behind this. What the weather map tomorrow will show now, low pressure cell, this is a new one developing in the South Carolina area. Showers along the front. Area of high pressure behind, bringing in some much colder air. We'll go up in the atmosphere a little bit, taking that low pressure cell with us, and as we do, this is at about 18,000 feet up. What's going to happen is the circulation around this low, instead of letting it go out to the mid-Atlantic, it will turn it back to the north. Well, you can see as the winds turn it back to the north, it'll draw moisture from the Atlantic Ocean, and it has that cold air to mix with. Thus, some flurries are possible in the eastern part of Indiana, where on this sector of the country, they are looking at the possibility of some heavy snow. So this could be the first big snowmaker of this winter season. Now, as far as temperatures are concerned, it's still going to be a very chilly day tomorrow, so bundle up. These are our expected high temperatures, 20 degrees below the normal for this time of year. Here's my AccuWeather forecast then for tonight. Brisk, still a chance of, some spots getting a little drizzle. 38 will be the morning low. During the day tomorrow, mostly cloudy skies. Might have a brief peek at the sun later in the afternoon. Again, drizzle is possible. 46 will be our top temperature. Winds out of the north-northeast 12 to 22. Another cold wind tomorrow night at 32. On Thursday then, high of only 44. There's a chance of some wet snow or some rain. Didn't have time to put the snowflake in there. Weekend looks sunny, though. 56 for Saturday and 64 for Sunday. So that's what I call nice recovery. It's all in the timing, right?
Indeed.
That's it. See you later.
Thanks. We would like to remind you that we will continue our live coverage of the earthquake in California tonight, immediately following the conclusion of News Center 13, and we will have coverage for you all night tonight here at Channel 13. Donald.
Yes, sir. I have sports for you coming up. We'll kind of wrap up what didn't happen in the World Series tonight, and then two great Colt stories for you.
Okay. Right after this.
Nothing moves you.
Something wild is coming.
That's why.
The Cougar XR7. It has speed-sensitive steering.
She loved me, and she's gone.
So we join NBC Special Report already in progress.
Parking lot and travel south out of San Francisco to San Jose on 101 is very difficult at best.
Actually, I'd be curious to see if any of those people have started to be able to get out of Candlestick. At last word, they were all stuck in Candlestick, the parking lot. People left in a very orderly fashion but didn't get beyond the parking lot, although Bob Costas from NBC made it up. But they're probably stuck down there if that's the case.
A couple of local updates from the surrounding area from San Leandro. They're saying they're very lucky, no major damage or fires, no fatalities either in San Leandro. In Colma, no structural damage, a lot of broken glass. They had a small grass fire from some down electric wires. The fire department says it is out, and also they sustained no injuries either. That's remarkable.
And again, it is a 7.0 earthquake, and this earthquake occurred along the San Andreas Fault, and we're told by the Berkeley Seismographic Center that this earthquake occurred in the same general region as that last earthquake you remember we had. This was on August 8th, and that was a 5.4 earthquake. And in fact, in the days following that quake, we were on this alert. We were told that there was a great chance or a greater likelihood of an even stronger earthquake occurring. Of course, that window came and went, and we didn't have that quake. But
they don't have their window down, but they got their basics down pretty well.
They got
That's
the location
amazing.
well. So it's in the same general region as that 5.4 earthquake that we endured August 8th, and that one occurred in the middle of the night. This one at the height of the evening commute.
Let's ask Belva to come back, because we have video now, Belva, of what you saw when you went down to the heart of San Francisco's shopping area, the Union Square area.
That's correct. And the oldest building down there, the oldest department store, the I-Magnin store, as you can see, looked like snow on the ground. There were many injuries, 5 serious injuries. This young man has cerebral palsy. He was cut pretty badly. His sister, who threw her body over his to protect him, was cut even more. She's the young woman that lost several of her fingers down there. This young person was cut very, very badly. The young woman was 23 years old from Texas. This is her. That's his older sister. They were just visiting here, were just about to walk into I-Magnins when the windows above the doorway just showered down on them. And they were all hurt.
Presumably Union Square was packed, too, at 5:04.
It was. In fact, the park itself was crowded with people from the hotels in and around the square, from the St. Francis and the Hyatt hotels. But this is what I-Magnins look like. And amazingly, Neiman Marcus right across the street, or Macy's, none of those stores were really damaged. All of that glass remained intact. But just this one store right at the corner, in fact, one of the guys at the flower stand said that he felt the earth started to move. Immediately when he felt the earth started to move, he ran out into the middle of the street, and this is the flower stand right at the corner of the park there. He wasn't injured because he is a San Franciscan, is used to this kind of thing, and knew exactly what to do.
All right, Bella.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Emerald Yee and Evan White, who were talking with one of the many reporters from KRON who were out on the street. And what we were seeing, of course, was the shopping district called Union Square, I-Magnin, one of the more elegant stores in that very elegant city. The windows simply blew out at shortly after 5 o'clock tonight when the earthquake struck the area. And it appears that 2 of the victims, at least, were tourists. San Francisco, one of the most popular destinations, of course, for tourists in America. And at that hour of the evening, I can tell you the Union Square would be absolutely packed with people. But they do have their hospitals up and operating. They do seem to be in pretty good shape. and the heart of San Francisco, the downtown area, seems to have survived in pretty good fashion. We have no reports of any major damage to any of the hotels, which would be, at this time of the year at least, filled with a lot of people because the fall is a popular time. We want to show you now a kind of a composite of what we have been able to accumulate so far of the videotape of the damage in the San Francisco area by and large, and some of the outlying areas too. And then we're going to be talking with the Governor of California, George Duke-Major. This is the San Francisco Bay Bridge. That is the collapse span that we saw just moments ago. The Federal Emergency Management Assistance will be out there with some support beams that they bring in from the military, and they're saying that they can get that bridge repaired in a couple of days, and that, of course, will be a major boon to the community. The fire that you're seeing here that started earlier tonight, this is earlier videotape, apparently from a broken gas main, the northern part of the city in a residential area very near the San Francisco Marina and the waterfront area known as Fisherman's Wharf. We don't know how many people were hurt or killed in that area, but the death toll and the injury toll could go fairly high because that's a very popular area. At least one person trapped in the rubble there. That's near the approach to the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. A brick building came down, we're told, and collapsed on cars. Nighttime scenes now of the same fire. And standing by on the telephone in Frankfurt, West Germany tonight, where he's being flown back by the U.S. government, is the Governor of California, George Duke-Major. George, I can't pretend I don't know you. What are you hearing from your office in Sacramento?
Well, Tom, I'm here in Frankfurt because we opened a new California Trade and Investment Office yesterday, and about 1 a.m. our time in Frankfurt, I received a call about the earthquake, and then I've been following it on CNN and also receiving reports throughout the entire night. So I'm getting ready to return. The first flight that I can get out of Frankfurt to get back will leave Frankfurt around 10 a.m., and then I'll be getting into California just as quickly as possible. And the latest reports that I've been receiving is that over 60 people are known to have lost their lives already in this tragedy. And but I am also pleased that we've had a lot of preparation out there. All of the local, state, federal agencies have done a lot of planning, a lot of coordinating, effective coordinating types of exercises to respond to this type of disaster. And I'm very confident that they're doing as good a job as they possibly can.
All right, thank you very much, Governor. We know that this won't be an easy trip home for you, but we wish you safe speed, and we hope that you'll be able to get back to Sacramento and manage this continuing rescue operation that will be going by. And in Washington tonight is Representative Tom Campbell of the Bay Area. Congressman Campbell, what can you tell us about what you're hearing from your district?
Well, the epicenter apparently was located right in my district in a town called Hollister, which is in between Monterey and San Jose. That is a mountainous area, and there's a lot of construction that really is leaning up against those mountains. So we're very worried about the damage in and around the residential areas of the mountains. That obviously is also the area that gets to the news last. There's much coverage of San Francisco, but there's much cause, I'm afraid, to worry about that area and Santa Cruz.
And are you able to get telephone calls through and get any report from the police and the mayor in Hollister, for example, about buildings still standing or deaths and injuries?
We haven't been able to get any absolute clear numbers yet. I apologize, but we've been trying. What we do receive are phone calls out from mobile phones. The phone lines themselves are down and the electricity is down. But what we do get are mobile phones, and I've been in touch with my district office and with the local officials. And here's the situation as we understand it. Power is out, telephones are out. However, no widespread fires outside of the San Francisco area that's been described. San Jose Airport is receiving flights, Oakland is receiving flights, but not sending them, and San Francisco Airport is shut down.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate that information, Representative Tom Campbell, who, as he indicated to us, he's a Republican, and he represents the city of Hollister, which is right down there on the peninsula, which is just south of San Francisco. That was the epicenter of the earthquake that occurred tonight. Now, almost 6 hours ago, it occurred at 5:04 Pacific time, and that meant that it was 9 o'clock here. It was actually coming up on 4 hours ago. And these are nighttime scenes now from KRON. This could be 101 going south. It could be any one. We're told now that it's Highway 280 leading out of the city of San Francisco. That's the principal thruway down south of San Francisco. It would take you down to San Mateo and San Bruno and South San Francisco to the airport. And Evan White described these roads earlier appropriately as a parking lot. People probably getting in their cars and moving out of the city because they don't want to be around in case something else happens, and aftershocks go on. And they can be pretty unsettling as well once you get through the first earthquake, which in this case we're told was clocked at 15 seconds. Then there have been a series of pretty severe aftershocks after that going on about every 20 minutes or so. And they, too, can cause damage because what happens is that the first big shaker weakens a structure, a bridge, a building, a highway overpass of some kind considerably. The next aftershock comes along. It may not be quite as strong, but it's enough to bring it down. And also, I'll tell you that it's psychically unsettling to go through all that. It's just not something that you want to deal with because it's psychologically not a very pleasant experience to go through earthquakes. So that's where we stand at this hour in San Francisco. They are continuing to fight a fire. It appears that the worst damage was done just across the bay in an approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge. The casualty figure is now running at 69 people dead. That has not been confirmed. It could go higher. It may be slightly lower. It does appear that at least 50 to 60 people were killed when a portion of the interstate highway approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge came down tonight. The peak of the rush hour, 5:04 Pacific time, which, as I indicated to you just a few moments ago, makes that here in New York, it's coming up on 10 to 1, and at that time it was shortly after 9 o'clock, so it was about 4 hours ago. KRON, our affiliate in San Francisco, has been on the air all night long as best they can be under the circumstances. They have videotape still coming in. Let's see if we can catch up with some of it.
Stay away, except for inspectors, dispatchers, and emergency crews, of course. That's in the Redwood City Hall of Justice.
So we can tally up the fatalities in a crude fashion because we're still getting information. We have known for a while that there were 5 that were killed south of Market. Also 3 people in that Marina District fire and 53 people in the Cypress section of east of the Bay Bridge.
We have no numbers to add, but we're told that in Santa Cruz there's a major collapse on the top of the Pacific Golden Mall, and they think there are fatalities. They do not know. They have not been confirmed, but that's in Santa Cruz, very close to the epicenter.
Also, as far as transportation, Southern Pacific trains are now running from South San Francisco to San Jose, but in San Francisco, the 4th and Townsend station is still closed. So transportation getting up to speed gradually.
Did we have the BART? We have not had BART return to service yet, right?
No,
when they do, they'll operate all night, but otherwise they're not running as yet either.
Okay, in downtown Santa Cruz, at least 6 people have been killed in the Pacific Garden Mall when the building collapsed. So 6 more to add to the list of fatalities. This is downtown Santa Cruz because of the collapse of a mall. It is hard to read some of this writing. I apologize. They said the quake took 3 minutes to get from the epicenter to San Francisco. I guess
from Santa Cruz here, it's a 3-minute delay, so it rumbled all the way up. KCBS is reporting, in fact, 200 people died in the Bay Bridge Cypress section. That's not the Bay Bridge collapse, but the section of the freeway east of the Bay Bridge leading onto Highway 17. KCBS now puts the death toll there at 200 and about a dozen deaths in San Francisco as that toll adds. So far more people apparently died, and the worst, of course, is that Cypress section in Oakland. Wilson Van Alt is back with us. Wilson?
Well, we've seen a lot of those pictures of bodies being taken out with shrouds over them, people who have died in this, but we have some other pictures, some pictures of heroic rescues that took place in all of this. This happened in the marina late this evening. It was about 2.5 hours after the earthquake itself had struck, and this was in an apartment building that had collapsed at the northeast corner of Broderick and Beach, at Divisadero and Beach Streets in the marina. This was a 3-story apartment building. They had taken about 4 people out of there earlier, and then they went back inside and found a woman who had been pinned by a door. She was in an area where there, in fact, was a gas leak, and they could not take in power tools to try to effect a rescue on her. They were afraid that the power tools, the so-called jaws of life, might set off a spark and indeed create an explosion there. So they went in and by hand removed the door on her, and you are seeing this woman as she is being brought out. She is an elderly woman. We do not have an identity on her yet or know her exact age, but she was brought out very much alive, very much in savable condition. In fact, she was joking with her rescuers as she was being brought out, saying, well, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do because I don't have medical insurance. So we have at least that much of a good story to tell about the heroics that were going on tonight, as well as the disasters that we've seen.
especially when the last word we have, that situation is contained down there. Now it's a matter of trying to seal up the area, make sure there's no other problems, but still a lot of gas leaks going on?
Our understanding is there have been gas leaks. There were, of course, in trying to fight the fires that were going on down there, there was word that the water mains had been broken, and along with those water mains, gas mains were broken. So there were collected pockets of gas in the building where this woman was taken out from, and in other places, and there were inspectors going through trying to find out where those pockets of gas were before they would let people back into the apartment buildings they occupied. As of about half an hour ago, most of the people were being allowed back inside their homes, although power was still out, and if they went back inside, they were using candles, if anything, for light.
We can assume power outages will go on for some time. It's coming back in fits and starts around many Bay Area communities, but of course a lot of them are still incredibly dark, and that'll go on for a while.
Still a very dramatic situation going on at the Cypress, that's east of the Bay Bridge. Again, we're now told that 200 people or more have been killed. Alameda County says at least 40 people have been rescued. This is a rescue effort that's expected to go on all night. No one knows at this point how many more cars are still trapped, but they say there are still many. So that rescue effort going on at this hour. Many dead, though.
And
200.
still interrupted phone service throughout the Bay Area. As we've said before, patience is going to have to be what you rely on, and cool head, because it's going to be a long time before you're going to know the whereabouts and the status of your loved ones. People getting home and making contact in any way is so difficult. The transportation system just beginning to groan back into some semblance, but still most of it is out. And traveling is hard.
Yeah, it's rather spotty, as Mark Jones says. Highway 280 near 101 at that point is closed because there's some structural damage. There are some vehicles, some official vehicles that are being used to block the highway so that people won't drive into that structural damage. And of course, the lights are out, so it's even more of a hazard. So that's an additional reason that the vehicles are there to keep people from stumbling onto some of those dangerous spots.
Most hospitals, remarkably, are operating even if they're operating under incredible handicaps, as Highlands has the triage set up in the parking lot because of power problems. Mount Zion in San Francisco not operating, but the rest of them are as best they can. We have some videotape, in fact, from the Letterman Army Hospital at San Francisco's Presidio. They called all their staff in, as all hospitals have done. They've got 5 of the victims from the Bay Bridge. One, unfortunately, was dead on arrival. Many are being airlifted by helicopter from the Alameda Naval Air Station, then to Crissy Field, and from Crissy Field, they're put in ambulances and taken to Letterman General Hospital. In fact, San Francisco General says they've only received a few people, and they may think it's because of the heavy traffic, simply forces people to go elsewhere. One makes decisions on what you do with the injured based on how soon you can get some help to them. And that's the problem. You can't get any place very easily tonight in the city or outside the city.
And a couple of miscellaneous things to report. The power is out at Moss Landing. They expect it to take 3 days for power to be restored there. And Pacific Bell, we're telling you about how the phone lines are down and how people are working to get that going again. Well, at the same time, employees who are not involved in providing or maintaining vital communication service, they're being told, do not report to work. And again, I guess common sense has to prevail. I mean, every situation is different as to who reports to work and who doesn't. For the most part, people are being told to stay put, don't go to work, but if you know your services are needed, then obviously go where you're needed.
As we've said many times before, if you are home, the best place for you to be is where you are. Try to make the best of, obviously, a bad situation, and check your house, and you might check it a little later. We get aftershocks. We had one about 9:25. We didn't feel it here, but it was registered, and aftershocks can possibly loosen things already loose. So make periodic checks of where you live for your appliances and gas and the like. But as we've also said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Don't turn things off unless you feel there's a real need to, because it's going to be a while before anybody can get out to help you.
And to help alleviate the congestion on the phone lines, we do know that many of you do want to get word out to your loved ones who are probably panicking wondering if you're okay. The best way to do this is to call one contact outside of the area, let that person know you're okay, and actually this is something that should have been set up before the earthquake, and then your loved ones, friends should call that person to find out how you're doing. But for them to all call in here, it would just create even more of a problem, and many of them won't be able to even get in here.
We have been told.
All right, we are watching and monitoring station KRON in San Francisco. Emerald Yee and Evan White talking to us now about what's going on. They're bringing us up to date. Emerald mentioned some death toll numbers that are unusually high. They are unconfirmed when she said that maybe 200 people have been killed on the Cypress Bridge approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge. We must tell you that we have not been able to affirm that in any fashion. The highest number that we've had from the California Highway Patrol and other officials has been 60 to 70. It could go as high as 200, but no one knows that for sure at this hour. There's a good deal of confusion out there. Phone lines are down, so is power. It was the height of the rush hour at 5:04 Pacific time when the earthquake struck, and the top span of that highway went down onto the bottom span, and there were probably a lot of cars and trucks on it at the time. Vicki Zawinski is in the Santa Clara area, I think, tonight. She's on the telephone to us now, and Evan White was just talking about the danger of aftershocks, which are those smaller earthquakes that come along after the big one. And, Vicki, I gather you've been having them all night long.
Yeah, I think I felt about 5 of them now. We just had one about 5 minutes ago.
And are they doing additional damage in your area?
Not really. They're just pretty fast jolts. They just pretty much rock the house.
They probably rock your psyche a little bit as well, don't they?
Definitely.
You're south of San Francisco and Santa Clara, right?
That's correct.
And what kind of damage did you suffer in your community?
Well, there's a lot of internal damage. There's not a lot of the outside structural damage. It looks like it's pretty much a lot of glass broken, a lot of things tipped over in the house. I think the power's definitely out. They've turned all the gas off in the area, and they've just told everybody to stand by and stay put.
And do you think that you'll be able to move around your town tomorrow?
I doubt it. I have a feeling that tomorrow's going to be pretty dead. It took me about 3.5 hours to make a commute that takes me normally 20 minutes getting home this evening, and all the stop-and-go lights are out, and so people are running lights. It's a mess.
But no danger of looting at this hour? People cooperating by and large in Santa Clara?
I think in Santa Clara here, yeah. I'm not sure about other areas, but around here, most of the neighbors are getting together and bringing food and water out.
All right, thank you very much. Vicki Zawinski, who's in Santa Clara, California tonight, which is south of San Francisco. That whole area was rocked by this earthquake, which struck in the peninsula in the Santa Cruz area of Richter scale of 6.9 altogether. And what has happened is it's radiated out from there, and the more densely populated areas, which of course include San Francisco and Oakland and the immediate Bay Area, have taken the hardest hits altogether. It is Route 880 that we are concerned about. The approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge, spans on the bridge are down. Fisherman's Wharf, you can see at the top there, is just to the left of there where the most severe damage in the city seems to have occurred, although we're told downtown in Union Square, Magnin windows came out, people were hurt there. Nothing about hotels so far. The old and very elegant San Francisco City Hall has taken some internal structural damage, but the mayor of San Francisco, Art Agnos, saying that he believes that they're doing pretty well at this hour. So that's where we stand right now. This is NBC News, and we are continuing our coverage of the San Francisco earthquake. Bob Jameson, our correspondent, was out thinking that he was going to have... Okay. Dr. David Hammonds of Kaiser Santa Clara Hospital is on the phone to us right now. Dr. Hammonds, are you getting some earthquake victims at your hospital?
Yes, sir, we are.
Can you tell us the nature of the injuries?
At this time, we've had about 100 patients who have been treated and released for minor injuries, mostly from falls or falling debris. We've had a couple of patients admitted to the hospital, and one patient who passed away after having a heart attack due to the earthquake.
And what about any request that you've had from the San Francisco hospitals, Letterman, for example, and that's the hospital, not the entertainer, and the other San Francisco General Hospital, those hospitals, are they asking you for assistance?
Well, at this point, we haven't had any requests for that. All of our medical staff is here tonight and trying to treat the patients, but we haven't had any requests even from other hospitals in our area in the South Bay for further help, and we're prepared to handle a number of patients, and we haven't seen too many critical injuries at this point.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. David Hammonds, who is at Santa Clara tonight. That's just slightly out of the most severe area, although they got shaken up quite a bit as well. NBC's Robert Hager is on duty tonight in Washington, D.C. A big piece of the recovery program will be the Federal Emergency Management Group. What is that called, Bob? FEMA, I think it's described as, right?
Yes, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, and they're setting up a briefing room. They already have a control center here where they're trying to keep track of it. I think the big effort here is to avoid what happened with Hugo, to avoid the situation where it looks like the federal government is behind the curve. They're trying to stay ahead on this one.
Bob, is there any possibility, do you think, that the President, in addition to dispatching Samuel Skinner as Transportation Secretary, and others will go out there himself sometime this week?
Well, I haven't heard that. That appears to me, as it may appear to you, to be logical. But I haven't heard anything of that order yet. As you said, the Transportation Secretary, he got sent out there immediately. There had been some word earlier that he might wait till morning, and then I think somebody must have decided, no, he should get underway right away tonight. So he's out there and traveling overnight, took a couple of congressmen with him, and then there's another plane load being organized for first thing in the morning from Andrews Air Force Base with about 6 or 7 other Congress people on it.
All right, Bob, I just want to read you something that's just come across in the wires because we were referring to it just moments ago. The Alameda County Public Information Officer is a man by the name of Marty Boyer, and he says, in fact, at least 200 people were crushed to death in their cars when a mile-long section of the upper level of Interstate 880 in Oakland collapsed onto the lower level. That is Marty Boyer of Alameda County. Whether, in fact, he is getting wholly reliable information, we can't say. We're not disputing his word. It's just that everything at this hour does remain very uncertain. But that is a sharp increase in the number of deaths being reported now by a government official in the San Francisco Bay Area in Alameda County, which is the Oakland Bay Area. It is that section of the bridge in which you make the approach to that we now are hearing that maybe as many as 200 people may have died. It is not unlikely, if the span that collapsed was a mile long, cars at that hour would be bumper to bumper, and there could easily be at least 200 people both on the upper and the lower span. So that's the latest that we have on the death toll right now. That is a sharp increase from the 40 to 60 that we were hearing earlier from the California Highway Patrol. KRON is still on the air in San Francisco, our affiliate, where at this hour out there right now, it is 10 o'clock in the evening, and they are continuing to bring in their reporters and their videotape. Let's go back now to KRON.
Because that traffic jam had kept them from getting some of the patients that they thought they might get. We'll wait and see.
We also have some good news southbound out of San Francisco to the peninsula. Caltrans says their tracks are okay. They've done the check. Trains are about to begin operating out of San Francisco southbound from San Francisco to San Jose. So the crush of people stuck trying to get home southbound without transportation will have Southern Pacific and Caltrans pretty soon to do that. All right, Helicopter 4 apparently is live for us. We're going to go. No. There it is. Do we know what it is?
Is that over the Bay Bridge? Cypress. That's
all right, that
Cypress.
is the Cypress accident where they are working with generated power and all the emergency people they can. That's a live picture from Helicopter 4 looking down on the Cypress overpass just east of the Oakland Bay Bridge where it meets land and peels off in the 3 directions. The Cypress Freeway is that begins 17 southbound just beyond eastbound from the toll plaza where it collapsed onto the freeway deck below it, trapping people in their cars during the height of commute. And this is where we're now hearing at least 200 people are believed to have died, untold number of injuries. Because it is cement that has fallen to the freeway deck below it, it'll be some time before we know the extent of the death, the damage, and the fatalities coming out of there. Transportation, BART, operating in the East Bay, not under the bay. Train southbound from San Francisco about to get underway, and while there are thousands of people, as you said, at the dock, the ferries are getting them home.
Also, Highway 580 from Oakland down into Castro Valley is clear, so traffic is moving there. And now some employees are being told to report to work, and that includes all Lockheed employees. They're being asked to show up at work tomorrow. As far as power in all of San Jose, it will be at least noon tomorrow before PG&E can get its power. Among the schools that are open tomorrow are the schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District, and that's in Central Contra Costa.
But add Oakland to the school district that will be closed tomorrow. I just got that one handed to me as well.
All right.
Usually a day after an earthquake, if you don't make it to school or to work, people will understand. There are lots of things to take care of.
And for tonight, the top concern for some people will be getting a place to sleep or to rest or just to seek refuge from all this that's going on. Red Cross shelters are set up in 3 locations in San Francisco. Marina Middle School. I would imagine those would be filled with the people that were burned out of their homes on Beach and Divisadero streets. Also, there's a Red Cross shelter at the Moscone Center and one at St. Ignatius. And cots are being sent up from Los Angeles and Sacramento for the Red Cross shelters.
Now, let's go back to Helicopter 4. Again, flying over the Cypress Interchange in Oakland. They're a little lower to the ground to see the operation, an incredible intensive rescue operation going on there. They've brought in rescue teams from all over, including, I believe, the military, trying to get the cement lifted off and trying to get the people who may still be trapped underneath. This is an operation, obviously, that will go on through tonight. The darkened spot runs from top to bottom of your screen is that part of the freeway that collapsed onto itself. And down below, the upper deck is southbound. When you come off the Bay Bridge on Highway 17 heading south, you'd be in the upper deck. If you were coming northbound to the bridge or up 80, you would then be on the bottom deck. And of course, 5:04 is the heaviest commute time. I can give you a traffic update while we look at Helicopter 4. The Presidio entrances to the Golden Gate Bridge still closed, other access routes. This is the daylight before the sun went down tonight of what you were just seeing live from Helicopter 4. This is what you couldn't see in the dark. This is what happened to the overpass, the upper freeway deck of the Cypress Interchange. It broke off in sections, falling to the lower deck below it, full of cars at the time. This is earlier shots. These are taken again from Helicopter 4. 200 at least believed dead, and scores more obviously injured. The pictures pretty much speak for themselves.
Is you ready to take Saturday?
And as I mentioned a bit earlier, somehow they expect the Bay Bridge to be repaired sufficiently in a couple of days to get traffic 3 lanes at least, they say, in both directions open. But 3 days is a long way from now. This is back to a live picture from Helicopter 4. You can't see anything but very little lights. We're going to try to get a live report from you from Rita. In Helicopter 4? Rita Cohen? Okay, she's in the chopper for us, as she is. We're going to get, she can certainly see a lot better with her own eyes what we can see, looking at their shot from TC4. Stay on the shot, keep them high. We're still everything audio. Keep stretching. You ready? Tell them to hold the shot and land. As you can see, you talk about power outages. Very little electricity is still being restored to Oakland, as in most areas hit by it. The cars, by the way, who were left on the Bay Bridge are being towed to impound lots, and folks, when all settles down, should get in touch with the CHP, and they can let them know where their cars are being kept. Because obviously it's going to be a while before it is all undone. All the cars have to be towed off the bridge and impounded someplace. And they'll know where they are, hopefully, but it might take a few days, so do be careful. Let's go to Rita Cohen. She is live for us in Helicopter 4. Rita?
You now, Evan. There we go. It's a live picture we're showing you right now on top of the Cypress section of the Nimitz Freeway. The large floodlights overlooking the view where most of the damage has been done on this section of freeway, and quite a few crews still down there working. Obviously, as you can see, traffic is not getting through Oakland on the Cypress section. It is being diverted onto Highway 580 through downtown, and surprisingly, it is flowing smoothly. Now, to get out of San Francisco, some people have reported that they have gone down Park Presidio and across the Golden Gate Bridge, where traffic is flowing at the moment. Southbound, Highway 101 through Marin County is still open and moving, and the San Rafael Bridge is still open and traffic flowing across that span for those who must get to the East Bay. As I was driving down the East Shore Freeway a couple hours after the earthquake happened, Evan, coming westbound on Highway 80 along the waterfront from University Avenue in Berkeley and past Ashby, you could just see the ripples and the crevices in the road surface there. One car obviously down to its hubcaps on the wheels that had fallen into one of the crevices. Lots of damage at that location. They're also talking about similar damage at the Bay Bridge, lurch cracks in the mud at the Bay Bridge toll plaza, which of course will have to be repaired before they can reopen that structure. Now the Army Corps of Engineers is talking about a plan to put a temporary structure at the Bay Bridge. They say the technology is there. They have used it in other situations. Whether or not they can do it in 3 days, though, remains to be seen, but they will attempt it to try to get traffic flowing again on the Bay Bridge within 3 days, or at least within a week. Bart, we have heard from the BART general manager that they were surveying the BART tube and trying to check that out, trying to get service back as soon as possible. It is not up at this point, but they do have, as you have been talking about, I know we're repeating ourselves a little bit here, but some people may not have heard about the red and white ferry service that is offering free shuttle from the Embarcadero to the East Bay. That is another way for getting people who are in San Francisco to their homes in the East Bay. Evan, back to you.
See, if you're sitting home in the dark, you can see from Rita's pictures there are very few areas that have any lights at all restored, at least in Oakland. That pretty much is true in a lot of places.
I just got off the phone with Joe Benton. He's our Washington, D.C. correspondent, and he says that Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner will be the one coming out, not Chief of Staff John Sununu. And also heading out this way is Congressman Don Edwards. He says he wants to pull out all the stops as far as getting federal aid to California. Also coming out is Congressman Norm Mineta and the Vice President's wife, Marilyn Quayle. And as for Governor Deukmejian, who was in West Germany, he is hours away from getting on a plane to head right back to the Bay Area, or back to California, I should say. He'll be getting on an Air Force flight from Frankfurt, and he'll be leaving at around midnight our time.
This is an update on the Marina fire and collapsed buildings we talked to you about earlier. The latest figure is in all 12 buildings involved in the Marina, either burned or collapsed. 12 there tonight. We're trying to get a link now on the ground at the Cypress interchange in Oakland. Reporter Anthony Moore is over there with the remote crew for us, and as soon as we get their picture up, we should be able to get you an update assessment of just what the situation is at that collapsed freeway in Oakland. Is he ready? Okay, let's go to Anthony Moore in Oakland on the ground at the Cypress interchange.
Cypress, Evan, I am at Cypress and 24th Street. Behind me, you can see the devastation that this earthquake has caused. The top section of the freeway there has literally dropped onto the middle section, and the middle section is only precariously holding itself up. With photographer John Weaver, we're going to walk a little closer here, and you're going to see just how bad this is. This is a pylon that held up the upper section and kept it up before the earthquake happened. You can see rebar here that's at least 2 inches in diameter that has been completely sheared off of the top section. So this pylon here, standing on the floor, let me get closer to it so you can see just how big it is. This pylon here was holding up the upper section. And we are told that for a half mile to a mile and a half from about 18th Street, which is off that way, to 24th Street where I am, and then all the way up to 32nd Street, that top section collapsed. It was during the rush hour, and normally, according to police officers from the Oakland Police, this would have been bumper-to-bumper traffic. It has not been confirmed that it's bumper-to-bumper, but for sure there were quite a few cars under there. We've had a chance to talk with a number of the rescuers who were here at this section not too long ago, and they were able to find one man alive in between these two sections. Apparently a young man who actually had been trapped in his car since the beginning of this earthquake, obviously, when the top section went down. If we can roll the tape of that from the truck, we're going to try and roll some tape to show you the actual rescue, which took place not too long ago. About 8:45 or 9 o'clock is when they were actually able to bring the man out. So he was underneath for several hours.
Happened to us tonight. We're operating precarious situation as well. That was Anthony Moore. He is at the site of the Cypress collapse of that freeway, as you could see, and it was incredibly powerful, obviously.
And to try to put the severity of this earthquake into some perspective, I was handed some information that seems to indicate that this is the third strongest earthquake in California history. The first one, of course, being the one in the San Francisco area in 1906, and there was also one, that one measured 8.3, and in Kern County, there was one that measured 7.7 in Kern County. That was July of 1952. I believe the one that took place in Morgan Hill in 1984.
Emerald Yee and Evan White, and we just saw from one of their reporters, Anthony Moore, the close-up footage of that collapsed section of Interstate Highway 88 in the Oakland Bay area, the so-called Cypress approach to the Bay Bridge. They are now saying that there may be as many as 200 people who were killed when those two sections of the freeway collapsed tonight at the height of rush hour. And that, of course, is a very popular route off the Bay Bridge going south towards San Jose in what is called the East Bay section of the San Francisco area. It's a popular bedroom for many commuters coming into the city of San Francisco, and that's where they work. We go now to Bob Jamieson, our NBC News correspondent, who was at Candlestick Park earlier tonight when the earthquake hit. He's managed to find his way back into the city, and he's at the NBC News Bureau right now. Is it a darkened city as you look out the window?
Yes, Tom, there are still power problems. There is some emergency power on in some buildings in downtown San Francisco, but power has not been restored. The streets, which had a great deal of traffic earlier this evening, are now pretty quiet. The only large crowd that we noticed some time ago was a group that gathered to wait for a ferry to go back to the East Bay. Mayor Art Agnos of San Francisco said a short time ago that the water and sewage systems seem to be operating fine. They are putting the number of injuries in San Francisco proper at about 100, the number of deaths in San Francisco proper at about 8. 5 from a building collapse in the South Market area, and 3 who were killed in that fire near Fisherman's Wharf. In San Jose, we are told there have been no fatalities reported, but 100 injuries, some of them minor, some of them serious. A building collapse in Santa Cruz with some fatalities, but the big question, which we cannot answer, or the number that we cannot confirm, is the number of those who died on the Cypress Bridge.
Yeah, we are... that was a very good roundup, Bob, and around the city, people will want to know, well, what about the Golden Gate Bridge? No damage. In fact, it was the only one open after the earthquake, we are told tonight. And they are saying that 200 people died when the Cypress Bridge collapsed. That is the approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge, but that has not been confirmed. And I think that even from this distance, it's fair to say that it'll be some time before they can confirm it, because the collapse was so complete, they won't know until they begin to lift those spans. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would agree. Because of the double-decker nature of this, it's very dark, obviously. There has been some confusion, and it will be some time before that's resolved. We have heard all evening long that the number of injuries there was in the several hundreds. I might add that the highways south of San Francisco now are apparently open and quite busy.
Yeah, I would think so. A lot of people probably who live in San Francisco may be heading south for more reasons than just to go visit. But on the other hand, that, of course, south of San Francisco is a popular bedroom for commuters who come up from Palo Alto and from Sunnyvale and other areas. And then there is Silicon Valley, which also is a place for some people near the San Francisco area go to work. We want to try to put all of this, Bob, for our audience in some perspective. Right now in the city of San Francisco, we don't want to give them the impression that there is chaos in the streets and that the fires are burning everywhere. That fire is confined to the Marina area still. That's the only one you know about?
Yes, that's the only one that we know about, the only one that, and that seems to be confined, and the last report we had was that it was contained. Mayor Agnos has praised the response of San Franciscans who have apparently acted in an orderly fashion throughout this emergency and have helped one another. I think at times there have been problems with enough public safety personnel, certainly problems with water pressure. There was a potentially very dangerous situation. I mean, I think that one bit of luck San Francisco did have tonight, that at a time when there were a number of gas leaks throughout the city, there was also low water pressure in the first moments after the earthquake, but there was just the one fire.
All right, thanks very much, Bob Jamieson in San Francisco. We know this has been a long evening, but it will go on for you and for the others who are reporting what is going on out there. And in Washington, D.C. right now, Bob Hager is keeping us up to date on what the federal response to all of this has been. He talked earlier with Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner. We can only tell you that the San Francisco area, with 700,000 people in the city itself and then a couple million in the perimeter, transportation is going to be crucial. That city will come to a grinding halt without a lot of help from the federal government. And, Bob, I guess they're going to get a lot of help.
Yes, and I think the choice of Skinner, too, is somebody that the president, that Bush trusts, an old ally from Chicago, and he used him successfully on the Alaskan oil spill, several other things of that category. So I think that's why he called on him, even though maybe it's a bit of a stretch to call it particularly a transportation crisis. I just heard, too, from the Transportation Department, they say they'll be getting in there in about 4.5 hours, and they're going to Moffett Naval Air Station. That's about 5 miles north of San Jose. So I think if I got my geography right there, that's just south of San Francisco, I believe.
It is. I did wonder, in fact, about some of the military facilities, because on the Oakland Bay Bridge side, that's a major naval port for the United States. Recently, I was out there, and the USS Carl Vinson, which is a big flat top, was posted there, and I would think that they'd be worried about getting people in and out of the Alameda Naval Station and out of the Oakland Bay shipyards as well. That's a crucial area, so there no doubt will be some military activity around there as well. We're going to go back to KRON now, the people who have been flying by the seat of their pants in an admirable fashion all night long, bringing us up to date on what is going on in their city, in their area. And we've been hearing most of the night from Emerald Yee and from Evan White, two of their crack anchor people and reporters. So let's go back there and hear what they have to say now.
Los Altos to Highway 85, a stretch of about 5 to 10 miles because of major buckling and damage to overpasses. Well, now the Office of Emergency Services says that as many as 250 people are dead from the Cypress overpass collapse.
We have some more video of that, I'm told, a daytime video of the Cypress overpass just east of the Oakland Bay Bridge. All right, we don't have the video right now.
All right, so the death toll continues to climb. They are still trying to rescue people. It's an effort that they expect to go on all night. They're desperately trying to get people out of there. They say there are many people that they believe are still trapped there.
The rules to remember tonight: don't flush your toilet, at least in San Francisco and anywhere else where there's severe damage. The sewer system in San Francisco simply can't handle it. It is also a toilet that is not being used as a source of water if you have water main breaks. We're finding a lot more water and gas line breaks than first thought. That's the kind of thing that starts evolving, too, as the night wears on. When you start assessing neighborhoods that may appear to be unscathed by a quake, you'll find out more than power lines and telephone lines are down, but there's damage to either sewer, gas, or water lines, too. So you can pretty well have to make your own assessment as to how serious the situation is in your environment. Use common sense, smell for leaks, check around, and check frequently as the night goes by, just to make sure everything still is as it was the last time you went out and checked. Now we're going to roll the Cypress. All right, this is certainly the most...
We cannot hear Evan White, but he was talking about this is the Cypress Bridge approach to the Oakland Bay Bridge. There was some confusion earlier about just where this was located, but as you can see, section after section collapsed. And it was about a mile long, and they're now saying that the death toll here could be more than 200. It's easy to see how that could happen. What you're seeing just to the right of your screen is how the bridge would be normally configured, and then when it dropped flat onto the bottom surface. There were cars and trucks there. Nighttime rubble, the evacuation that is going on there, at least one person has been rescued, but you never know in these circumstances. That's a very complete collapse of girders and highway. And it's also hard to lift those up. They'll have the jaw. Look at that. The powerful forces of nature that have visited us now in the last 2 months. Hurricane Hugo sweeping ashore in the southeast. Now this earthquake, 6.9. For all of our fancy construction, all of our dreams, all of our fast and powerful cars and high-rise buildings, You cannot hold back something like an earthquake of this magnitude. Although most of the high-rises in downtown San Francisco did withstand it very well because they are constructed to do just that. Painful and difficult night in the San Francisco Bay Area.
We'll continue here on Sunday.
As we are looking at live pictures coming from the San Francisco Bay Area tonight, courtesy of KRON, from an area just across the bay in the approach to the San Francisco Bay Bridge on the Oakland side. It's called the Cypress Bridge approach. It is Interstate 880, and that was at the peak of the rush hour when all of this occurred, we think. Oh, it would be hard to survive a lot of that, I'll tell you. We're going to take you back now to KRON TV, to Emerald Yee and to Evan White, who have been covering this story throughout the evening. And I'll be giving way here to NBC's Chuck Scarborough. We'll have continuing coverage as long as this story warrants it throughout the evening on NBC, and then a special edition continuing tomorrow morning on NBC's Today Show. We'll begin first with NBC News at sunrise, and then an extended edition of the Today program, going live across the country, bringing you up to date on the extent of the damage and the repair. So here now, Evan White and Emerald Yee.
Here's some Marin information about transportation commute for the morning. Golden Gate Transit says they are going to run ferries from Larkspur from 5:30 in the morning. There are going to be 3 boats, and they're simply going to run them continuously all through the day. Sausalito's going to run its ferry from 7:15 in the morning. Perhaps earlier, they're not sure. Buses will run over the Golden Gate Bridge on a normal schedule. If traffic gets too heavy, they're saying that they're going to divert the buses and the traffic on those buses to the Larkspur Ferry. The red and white fleet will run service. They're running it now from the ferry building to Jack London Square. They have not told us how long they're going to be doing that.
Right now, we'd like to show you some damage from Los Gatos. We don't have... things askew, glass cracked. But basically in the peninsula area towards San Jose, there have been no reports of major injuries. But again, this is Los Gatos. And this is after darkness fell, people walking around, trying to get their bearings once again. Here are some pieces of structures that fell to the floor at 5:04 when the earthquake hit.
All right. Greg, can you shed any light?
Evan, we're starting, our phone system just came up downstairs, and we're starting to get some calls now from school districts about tomorrow. The Jefferson School District in Daly City will be closed tomorrow for its 7,000 students. There are 15 schools there, 12 elementary and 3 junior high. Again, they will be closed. Though Superintendent Joe DiGeronimo is asking that custodial and maintenance people do report to work because they want to clean up the schools and get them ready for the day after. That's Jefferson School District in Daly City, closed tomorrow. Police tell us, we have not yet confirmed with Oakland schools, that Oakland schools will be closed tomorrow. And we've also gotten a call from Tahia Day School in El Cerrito, which has 160 children, grades 4 to 8. They will be closed tomorrow. That's it for the moment. We'll keep you up to date as it comes in.
All right, unfortunately, I've been handed the worst part of all this, and that is an update on fatalities. The estimate from the Cypress section of the Oakland freeway is 250. That is still an estimate, by the way, not a confirmed number. From the San Francisco Marina fire, the number of dead is 8. From the 6th and Townsend collapse in the San Francisco South of Market is 5. And in Santa Cruz, the collapse at the mall, now they say 6 people died there, which is more than we knew about
So
before.
at least in the Marina area, the last we had heard was 3 dead, and now there's 8. So the death toll is climbing.
Unfortunately, death tolls, well, the worst part, the injured toll is not even possible to calculate at this hour because there are still people trapped. They're still hunting for more.
All right, earlier we showed you tape from Los Altos, or actually that was Los Gatos, but now from Los Altos Police Department, they're saying the extent of damage there, and this is in the peninsula area, is relatively light. There are many calls for assistance relating to apparent gas and water leaks and downed power lines. So that seems to be the extent of the problems down there. There are, however, also calls for medical assistance because there have been several car accidents. There have been 2 structures that have been reported to have partially collapsed, and there's some window breakage, but you can report that.
Indeed, no deaths. Nice to say. Santa Clara seems so far to have fared relatively well in that, unfortunately, sometimes a lack of information can be misleading, but we haven't had serious reports of widespread injuries or damage.
The last we heard was from our reporter, Carl Sunken, and he was in the San Jose Bureau getting ready to go on live on our newscast when the earthquake hit, and from there he went out and he was heading towards Santa Cruz, and he was able to get a quick survey of the San Jose area, and he said that it seemed that San Jose came through okay. Kaiser's in San Francisco, by the way, would like to ask that everyone with regular appointments to not come in. They have no power in the medical building. They're on auxiliary power in the hospital. They are accepting emergencies. Urgent care patients should be going to the emergency room, and this is on Geary Street.
We don't know the situation of telephones, which is very difficult because when the sun comes up tomorrow and people want to continue daily lives, it's very difficult to know if you'd keep doctor's appointments and what damage in buildings, what hospitals don't need you to come in today. Not much we can say is use your best judgment and hope maybe phone service can get restored. But tens of thousands of phones are still out and are going to stay out for a while.
And you can assume that the first order of the day is just to get everything back to normal. So a lot of routine things, of course, will not be occurring tomorrow.
A 7-point earthquake on the 17th of October. 5:04. Widespread damage in the Bay Area. If you've been with us, you know it is serious. The Cypress overpass, the most serious location where rescue efforts continue. The devastating fire in the Marina District of San Francisco, hampered by the failure of the water system to deliver because the earthquake broke the water mains underground. It also broke the gas mains in much of the Bay Area, certainly in Oakland and San Francisco, and that causes concerns. That continues to be a problem, with getting 2 gas leaks, finding him, getting him shut down. We have more. Highland Hospital, the trauma center there, where many of the Cypress injuries were taken. Say 7 are in the trauma unit, 2 are critical, several with serious injuries. They have several doctors and nurses who have come in, and these are doctors who have come from other hospitals coming to Highland because they seem to be bearing much of the brunt of the disaster at the Cypress overpass.
They're reporting that some power is back up now in Pittsburgh, and the San Jose Unified School District will be closed tomorrow. We're giving you very spotty, disparate announcements, but that's the way it is in a situation.
Hopefully we get some more information because Bob and Suzanne are standing by back at our location at Sutro Tower to carry on from here. We switch back to Bob and Suzanne.
Thank you, Evan. Emerald.
We are coming to you from Sutro Tower. We'd like to give some credit to the people at Sutro who've made it possible for us to get our signal to you. This is an earthquake-safe building, and in any kind of a situation like this, this place can still transmit, and we feel very fortunate to be able to bring you what we have. Now, we have talked a lot about tonight the Cypress overpass of the 880 freeway in Oakland. This is, if you don't know the area, let me explain quickly. If you're coming from San Francisco, crossing the Bay Bridge, you can go north on 80 to Berkeley, or you can go south on Highway 880, it was formerly 17, into Oakland. It's that section there, a mile to a mile and a half, which has collapsed. We'd like to show you what is now edited tape. We have that capacity here at Sutro to edit tape. You haven't seen this footage before. It's going to start just as the earthquake hits.
This was the first major jolt that the Bay Area got at about 5:04 this afternoon.
So the camera's shooting in Oakland, and very shortly Again, the unreinforced masonry is taking the brunt of the damage. Water mains all over both Oakland and San Francisco have ruptured. And as Evan and Emerald have been telling you, here is the 880 overpass. Okay, you're looking at the lower structure of this double-decker roadway that has completely given way. If you look at it from the top, you can see that it's buckled to and fro. Again, we have an estimated 250 dead here. Originally, there were 400 injured. A lot of people like this gentleman did what they could to try to help others. You'll see this man try to climb over. He was apparently in a car on the upper deck. He tries to climb over to see what's going on beneath because he knows that his deck fell. And certainly the deck below is taking the brunt of it. Now you see how the two decks have come together here. The cars are completely smashed in there.
And what this man is doing, like many did, is to look underneath this structure to see if any people were trapped. And we have unofficial reports that some people were pulled from beneath this tonnage of concrete and steel.
Here is a case in point. Again, upper deck of the bridge, and they were able to get a stretcher up here. They're going to have to take this man down on a fire ladder to get him down to the ground. We're about 50 feet above ground at this point.
They were extending these ladders all the way up as far as they would go to get some of these people down.
You see the top of the ladder there. He was one of the lucky ones, of course, being on the upper deck. Below, we can tell you right now we have firm word that many rescue operations are still going on at this scene in Oakland.
The problem was this, that at the time of the earthquake, which we have repeated many times tonight, 504, there were certain sections of this freeway that had a backup, that had cars literally bumper to bumper at the time. Other sections, they were moving. Now, it was that section of the freeway, that mile-and-a-half stretch that Suzanne had mentioned earlier, where this tonnage of concrete and steel literally came down, sandwiching many of these victims between.
All right, we've been watching KRON in San Francisco as they bit by bit, piece by piece, put that story together. I'm Chuck Scarborough, NBC News in New York. Tom Brokaw has departed now. He is on his way to San Francisco to cover the story firsthand. I'm going to be spelling him until we hand it off at 4 o'clock in the morning to John Palmer. We're going to be covering straight through into tomorrow with this story, this major story, an incredible tragedy unfolding in San Francisco right now in the Bay Area. As you saw, the focal point of most of the damage right now, as far as we can assess, is that area on the Oakland Bay Bridge on the eastern side, the approach, where the concrete is pancaked down, the upper level pancaking down on the lower level, crushing many cars down there. The death toll is estimated now by some accounts to be up as high as 250 people, a major tragedy in that one spot alone. In San Francisco right now is Senator Pete Wilson, Republican of California. He is in the city. Are you with us, Senator?
Yes, I am, Chuck.
All right. Obviously, the immediate concern right now is the rescue of those who can be saved. What do you know about the situation from your perspective?
Well, not a great deal. I have been on the phone tonight to the White House and to the governor's office in Sacramento, but you have to understand that here in the city, there is no power. And therefore, you've seen pictures that I've not seen because there's no television. There's very little in the way of phone service. This happens to be one of the few that is able to function, and it's able to call out but not take any incoming calls. But what we are getting is information from radio. And though the State Office of Emergency Services has been reluctant, in fact, has refused to give any official casualty counts, what we're hearing from local news accounts on the radio is that the devastation along the Cypress Freeway in Oakland has resulted in terrific loss of life of about 200 people.
There is, of course, devastation throughout the area. I understand damage was felt as far away as 250 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake.
I've heard reports that it was felt as far away as Los Angeles. This was a big one. I'm told it was 7 on the Richter scale, and when it hit, I was on the 13th floor of the Clift Hotel in San Francisco, and it was the biggest I have ever experienced.
Was the hotel swaying, Senator?
It was shaking.
Side to side? Swaying. Now, can you give us some picture of the steps that Governor Wen, which has been doing a terrific job covering this? We're feeding that out to the rest of the network. You can see the epicenter near Santa Cruz, actually about 10 miles north of Santa Cruz. When the quake struck, it was about 6.9 or 7 on the Richter scale, according to seismologists around the country who've measured it. This is a very serious quake. It severely shook the area, did an awful lot of damage. Fires broke out in a limited area in San Francisco, and there are reports of fires in peripheral areas as well. The fires are fueled to some extent by gas lines that ruptured in the area, feeding the fires. And gas is a continuing danger there, because when gas reaches a mixture between 5 and 15% with air, if it's leaking, it then becomes explosive, and any spark of any sort can set it off. So there is continuing concern in San Francisco, even where there are no fires, about continuing leaking natural gas in the area. The death toll has been fluctuating wildly all night. It was as high at one point, reportedly up to 250 or so dead. But now we've seen the officials backing off from that report as they try to get a firmer fix on exactly how many were killed. But the devastation is obviously terrible, particularly on the Oakland side of the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge. There was a collapse there. If you haven't seen it before, it is an awesome thing to see, because about 1.5 miles of the freeway, a double-deck freeway, simply collapsed. That is, the top portion of the freeway let go and fell on the bottom portion of the freeway at the worst possible time. At 5:04 in the afternoon, the town was packed, people rushing home for rush hour. And there you see where the Bay Bridge is. If you look to the right of your screen on Route 880, that's where the main collapse occurred, although the Bay Bridge itself was damaged as well. We're highlighting the area for you now. Any cars, obviously, between the two roadways, the upper and lower, were pancaked completely down and crushed. And they're still trying to tally the death toll there. This is NBC News in New York. We're continuing our coverage of the San Francisco quake today that struck and did considerable damage to the San Francisco Bay Area. Robert Bazell is standing by now. He is our science correspondent. And Robert, can you give us a little more information on the nature of this quake and what's happening?
Well, Chuck, what I know, of course, is what I've been seeing on the news reports and also talking to friends, family, and other associates in the area. I am from San Francisco, so I know a great deal about the area. In some ways, of course, this is the terrible tragedy that we've been talking about, but as it unfolds, it seems like there are some very positive parts of it as well. The positive parts are that a lot of the emergency services remained intact as planned. The fire services seem to function, the police function very well. Everybody took part and joined together in helping each other. There have been some reports of some rioting and looting in the area of the collapsed freeway, the 880 freeway in Oakland. That freeway happens to run through some public housing, which is a very poor area, and there might be some pent-up frustration that got let out because of the tragedy. But all the hospitals are open. Apparently all the people who need medical care are getting it. The ambulances have been moving through the city without much trouble. There's a lot of people, as we heard from the KRON anchors, who are waiting for transportation because they had to abandon their cars and that sort of thing. But in a lot of ways, this seems to be something that, as bad as it was, it could have been a lot worse, because people who talk about earthquakes have always said that the worst possible time for an earthquake to hit would be just like this at rush hour. So it seems to have done much less damage. And one of the big concerns was all those new skyscrapers in downtown San Francisco. Except for some broken glass that hit the street and injured people in that way, there doesn't seem to have been too many injuries, and the structure certainly remained intact. So I think we can look at some positive parts to this, as well as it being, of course, a terrible tragedy.
I think so, and I think that San Franciscans such as yourself have a particular sensitivity to earthquakes because of the history of the area, especially after the 1906 quake, when there was some debate, as I recall my history, some debate on whether or not San Francisco ought to be rebuilt after that devastation. And the civic pride carried the day back in 1906, and it was decided to go ahead and rebuild the city, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was indeed. That's an interesting part, and it seems like there's been an enormous outpouring of civic pride in the area, not just in San Francisco, of course, but in the East Bay and in the South Bay as well today. We're still getting scattered reports of other areas down near the epicenter in Santa Cruz. Apparently there's been some fatalities and that sort of thing. But again, it hasn't been the massive devastation that we might hope. Again, although it is important to point out in terms of thinking about future disasters and future problems in the area that, as the earthquake specialist you interviewed just a while ago said, this earthquake is still less than 10 times as powerful as the 1906 earthquake. So the potential is there for a lot of serious damage both in northern and southern California. However, as the evening unfolds, what I've been hearing is, to me, has been much more hopeful than the original news.
You've answered a question for me. The 06 quake was 10 times as strong as the quake today?
About that. The Richter scale is a logarithmic scale, so that if you go up from 6 to 7, it becomes 10 times as much. So that's a great deal much more powerful. And in fact, this quake is not what seismologists have always been talking about as the big one. The big one is a quake that exceeds 8. The last big one in the continental United States was the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, and then there was the 1964 earthquake that was centered in Valdez, Alaska. That was about the same magnitude, but fortunately at that time there wasn't much population there.
And I've got to tell you, Bob, that the thought of a quake 10 times as powerful as the one that we saw today, the big one, as you say, to me is a little scary, because I think there was considerable damage done by this quake that barely nudged 7 on the Richter scale. If you multiply that by a factor of 10, I would be very concerned about San Francisco's ability to withstand that.
Well, that's right, and the prediction has been that big one, the target of that big one, the next one, is going to be in Southern California. The biggest danger zone seems to be the San Andreas Fault area near San Bernardino. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to happen there, but in terms of statistics, they're talking about that being the area where that kind of slippage of the fault could occur. One of the things that's important is a recent study of fault dangers did point out, however, that there had been a major possibility of this kind of slippage in the South Bay that had been overlooked in emergency planning for a long time. And a few months ago, there was a 5.4 earthquake just about in the same area of the San Andreas Fault as this one hit. And at the time, there was a warning given that people should maybe think that there was going to be a bigger one coming. And then, of course, that was forgotten. And also, that shows how imprecise the seismology is and earthquake prediction is. Nobody really predicted this. No scientist was able to say that this was coming.
No, Bob, they say scientists can't. Animals somehow can sense it maybe 24 hours in advance. There's some agitation on the part of animals, but we haven't figured out a way with all of our fancy machinery and our seismographs and everything else to predict when a quake will hit.
Yeah, and the other thing is, in terms of damage, that portion of the 880 freeway that was destroyed with such devastating results is not old construction. That is not 1920s, 1930s freeway. I remember when that was built, and I wouldn't want to be held to an exact date, but I think it was around in the 1960s. I think, as one of the scientists you had on before pointed out, that is on an area of landfill that can behave just like a bowl of Jell-O during an earthquake.
All right, Bob Bazell, thank you. Your loved ones and relatives are fine in San Francisco? They pulled
yes,
through okay?
Everyone is fine. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
All right, Bob. We're going to go back to KRON in San Francisco as they continue their coverage. They've got some new footage up now showing the bridge that collapsed, and let's take a look at that. This is a fire, actually. This is the fire that was burning in a localized area on the northern part of the town, the Marina District, and this was the fire I was talking earlier about that was fueled by the broken gas main initially, but you can see these are wood frame buildings, and wood frame buildings normally stand up fairly well in an earthquake because they're somewhat flexible, but given enough shaking and given the nature of the soil here, we heard an earlier scientist explain that soil in an earthquake, when it's the kind of sedimentary fill soil that you have in this particular area of San Francisco, it almost becomes sort of liquid like Jell-O, and it amplifies the shaking of the quake. This is KRON correspondents right now, Evan White and Emerald Yee, and they are covering the quake. We'll listen into them.
Magnin facade. The only major, as far as we know, downtown department store to lose a lot of glass. Macy's and Neiman Marcus did not. These are the folks who suffered the wrath of the glass, cut by the glass as it fell to the sidewalk. This one in the head, this female companion with this young man threw herself. No, this is a young woman. Another of the injured. On her brother to protect him. She lost some fingers and was terribly cut up. It was a scene of a great deal of agony in Union Square this afternoon, and much serious injuries from the glass, which is always the hazard in earthquakes, no matter where it is.
And Belva Davis, who came back she was right there when it happened, said that was the one building where the glass fell from. She said it didn't happen from the other buildings nearby, and there are other big department stores, Macy's and Neiman Marcus, but this is where the glass fell out and struck people below.
I was handed a note I want to make mention. The Salvation Army is appealing for volunteers. This is in San Francisco. Sandwiches, people to bring sandwich material. They want breads and meats and the like in 2 locations in San Francisco. I'm sorry, 1 in San Francisco, 1 in Oakland. If you want to help, at 1275 Harrison Street, south of Market in San Francisco. The Salvation Army could use some help with sandwich makings and to make the sandwiches. In Oakland, the address is 600 Webster. They're going to stay there all night, and they could use some sandwich makings and some folks to put it together.
We're joined once again now by Greg Lyon. And Greg, what have you got?
Well, I was down in the Marina District. You showed pictures just a bit earlier, and I'm just here to kind of talk about how it felt to be down there and the fact that I think when this thing is revealed in daylight tomorrow, we will find out that the Marina District suffered intense damage. There are buildings that are not collapsed down there that are off their foundations, and many of them. I didn't make a count because of the fire. We were mainly covering the fire. But there are structures that have moved completely off their foundations. You can see rows of garage doors, all of them slightly opened, having been forced open when the building settled, and it kicked the garage doors out. Their entire blocks where it appears that every garage door on the block is kicked out. The Marina District was indeed hard hit. As you said, there were fatalities. There was that terrible fire. There were people in that adjoining buildings who were rescued in heroic efforts by the fire department. Can't say enough good things about them and what they did. They stood there for perhaps 2 hours within 50 feet of the fire that was just raging, cooled the building down, finally got a woman out. And tomorrow morning it's going to show some severe damage.
And the Marina District, of course, is a particularly vulnerable area in our city because of landfill, and earthquake experts have said that that would be a dangerous area.
We've always felt that, right. As we cover stories, covering story after story on every April on the anniversary of the earthquake, that the Marina District would be hard hit, and in fact it was.
All right, Greg, thank you.
Little notice from the National Guard. They want folks to know that the 146th Combat Support Group is going to be active. It's in active duty status at Fort Funston. Anybody in the 146 is asked to report for active duty. Also, out of Travis Air Force Base is going to be a National Guard mobilization point. The National Guard is going to bring in some heavy equipment into the Bay Area to be used anywhere that's needed.
Right now, we'll go back to Rita Cohen. She's in helicopter 4 over perhaps one of the most tragic scenes in this earthquake. She's over the Bay Bridge. Rita?
Well, we are looking at what normally would be a lit-up Bay Bridge and a very bright San Francisco. I was just commenting with the crew on board Helicopter 4, cameraman Lou Calderon and our pilot Will Prater, the number of hours we have spent in night flight, flying in the dark, and it just is so hard to look over to San Francisco and not see the lights there from the Oakland skyline. Those who have a view, normally have a view of the skyscrapers and of the lights in San Francisco, you will see many parts of the city that are in darkness, just an eerie sight. It's also what we're seeing, of course, at the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza and over the Cypress section of the Nimitz Freeway, where just 2 areas where the floodlights and the crews are still working. Otherwise, it is darkness. In fact, so dark that we have a couple of police helicopters that are working the neighborhoods of West Oakland, apparently concerned about looting. And they are down there right now. That is what we're showing you. It's hard to see. As I say, lights are out, power is out in this section of Oakland, as it is in many areas still throughout the East Bay. We can look up along San Pablo Avenue through many parts of Berkeley, Emeryville, still with the power out, darkness in those areas. Downtown Oakland, though, we can mention the Kaiser building. That is entirely lit up. The Tribune sign is lit up on top of their building in downtown Oakland. I wanted to mention Bay Tracon, which is one of the major air traffic control agencies, of course, here in the Bay Area that monitors traffic for us in the sky, has just issued a 3,000-foot overflight restriction over Richmond because of hazardous gas leaks. It may be because of broken gas mains in the city of Richmond. That information just coming in to us from Bay Tracon, that they have imposed that flight restriction for hazardous gas leaks over the Richmond area. We can see Richmond off of our side window and do not see any fires or flames, but apparently some concern, and that advisory has been issued by Bay Tracon. Let me mention quickly, too, the traffic situation. We still have a lot of people trying to drive out of San Francisco and get home, be that Marin County or the East Bay. The Golden Gate Bridge is open. Traffic is flowing across the span in both directions. It was quite heavy getting out of San Francisco, but once you get to the span of the bridge, the traffic is flowing at a pretty good clip. Then you will also find traffic flowing smoothly across the San Rafael Bridge. Most of that traffic headed in an eastward direction. And right over it, I know it's dark, but we're showing you Highway 80, and traffic is making the connection here through Berkeley and Emeryville and into downtown Oakland and onto Highway 580. Looks like the Caldecott Tunnel is open and traffic is moving there. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Rita. Here's some specifics, in fact, on all those black areas down below Helicopter 4. PG&E says at its peak, nearly 1 million homes without power, and some 56,000 homes are still without power in the East Bay, and that power may not be restored until late this afternoon, or late tomorrow afternoon, excuse me. San Francisco, hardest hit with outages, still in trouble, most of the city. Most of San Jose is still out, and they hope to be back with power by noon tomorrow. So it's going to be a long night for a lot of folks in terms of light.
Long, dark night. And now we're joined by Linda Yee. She was at Candlestick when the earthquake hit. In fact, your cameras captured some of the earthquake motion.
We captured some of it. Before we get to that tape, though, I have to tell you, we were on the upper level of Candlestick Park. We were with the fans. We were doing our story when suddenly I felt the entire stadium shift. We thought it was just fans at first being very excited, stomping. Then I looked up and saw the actual concrete separating back and forth from the light post. It was the most frightening experience. You'll see the pictures are a little shaky, but this is just this is videotape of the actual earthquake happening. You can probably hear people in the background starting to scream. I wouldn't say it was chaotic at the time. Most people really didn't know what was happening. They were stunned. And then when they actually realized what was happening, that's when the screaming started. A lot of nervous people. Down on the baseball field, you can see that the players were confused about what was going on. And then when we took a look around the stadium, we noticed that there were cracks all around the stadium. In a few seconds, you'll see some pictures of that. In fact, so much debris was falling. I talked to some people who were carrying chunks of concrete out of the stadium.
The staircase in Section 53 broke up into pieces like this, and it's really dangerous up there. But the whole thing broke into pieces, so I got my souvenir.
Just missed. Yeah, just missed. It really came down hard. Yeah, we're on the top deck. It really shook. I've lived here all my life, and it never scared me in an earthquake. That was the first one that scared me.
Despite what was happening, it was really an orderly exit. I mean, some 62,000 people actually calmly walked out of the stadium. There didn't seem to be any panic. We're told that there were 2 injuries. 2 heart attack victims were taken from the Candlestick Park, and a woman who had been hit by falling debris was treated and released at Candlestick Park. As far as the game is concerned, obviously that's not a big priority now, but the baseball commissioners will be meeting tomorrow. They're going to be checking the structural damage of Candlestick Park. They're also going to look at the Coliseum, but it's unlikely that the game is going to continue, the World Series, as far as we know now.
All right, Linda, thanks a lot. And the way the crowd had left that stadium, I think, is one of the salient points of this earthquake tonight. The Bay Area people all over not creating pandemonium and scattering in a panic. Thanks a lot. That video really showed it.
Senator Pete Wilson has joined us in our studios this evening. You were in San Francisco when it hit. Where were you?
I was on the 13th floor of the Clift Hotel.
It's not a very lucky place to be.
It was, no, you're right, although luckier than for the
We understand Washington is responding already, and they have one of the secretaries coming out. Can you tell us anything?
Yes, I can. In fact, when I leave here, I'm going to go back to the hotel and hopefully get up to the 13th floor, change clothes, and then go down to try to meet Secretary Skinner.
Is he coming in tonight?
He's coming in tonight. And the Vice President, I think, is trying to make his way back up, too. He was here this morning for breakfast and is coming back. There will probably be traveling with Secretary Skinner, as I'm informed, Congressman Mineta and Congressman Edwards, and also Mrs. Quayle.
There is so much to be done, and as soon as possible, of course. How difficult is it to get the wheels going, to get the kind of federal help in here that's going to be needed?
I think that there will be all kinds of help made available. There is great difficulty, obviously, until daylight with an assessment of just how much damage has actually occurred to the infrastructure. The obvious you know about the...
Sure. Have you been able to get any kind of information that might supplant what we already know?
No, I doubt it. I think you probably know more than I do. You've been looking at the pictures all night. This is the first time I've had a chance to see any because, of course, there's no power outside of your shop here where you have your own generator. And so I've been on the phone to the White House. I've been on the phone to the governor's office. I'm hearing from people in Washington and Sacramento and New York about what they have been able to see, but I haven't been able to see it because there are no lights, there are no phones. I had one phone. I stayed where there was a phone working, and I was able to make calls out, not get them back in, but that's how I've been able to find out what is happening, but I haven't seen anything.
Well, I know you're going to have a very busy schedule when Secretary Skinner gets here. I'd like to ask you if you find the time and you can stop by us so the Secretary could perhaps talk to us about what we can expect and look forward to, because a lot of people would like to know.
I have the feeling that he probably will not. He'll probably be available for people who are out where he is. He's going to come in the middle of the night, get a briefing.
Now, where will he land? San Francisco airport's closed down.
Yeah, San Francisco is closed down. I expect he'll be coming into Moffett.
All right, sir. Senator Pete Wilson, thanks very much for coming by. We appreciate it all.
Also coming into Northern California, returning to Sacramento, will be Governor Deukmejian. He is not only out of state, but he is also out of the country. He was in Frankfurt, West Germany when this earthquake happened. He is about to get on an airplane. He is, we're told, leaving at midnight our time, so it's about a 12-hour trip, and he should be here tomorrow. And in the meantime, the acting governor of California is Lieutenant Governor Leo McCarthy, and he was at Candlestick when the earthquake happened, and that's where he started presiding as acting governor.
A couple of reminders, if you haven't heard, we're being asked to conserve water in San Jose and in San Francisco because of water main problems, but in Mountain View, where a main water supply is burst, it's critical to save water. And
well, we have temporarily lost the signal from KRON in San Francisco. They've been doing a terrific job out there covering this earthquake under very difficult conditions as they had to operate on auxiliary power. They were just talking with Senator Pete Wilson, whom we talked with on the telephone some time ago. He was in a hotel in San Francisco when the quake struck, and he described quite a bit of shaking in his hotel room. We have Dan Donahue, who is the Chief of Public Affairs for the National Guard. He's at the Pentagon right now, and there were some reports Bob Bazell mentioned, and they are on the wires, that despite all of the heroics we've seen, and certainly the overwhelming story out of San Francisco besides the disaster right now, is the heroic rescue going on to save people. Certainly a lot of men and women risking their lives because there are aftershocks and going into areas where there's considerable damage, risking another aftershock, knocking some more stuff down to save lives for people who are in there. Nonetheless, there have been reports of some looting, some gangs roaming the streets with baseball bats, and you saw a few moments ago a helicopter circling around trying to cast light on the neighborhoods that are completely blacked out. There's a power loss, about 1 million people without power right now in San Francisco, which is one of the consequences of an earthquake. Anyway, Dan Donahue is on the phone with us from the Pentagon, and he is the Chief of Public Affairs for the National Guard. And can you give us any more information, Mr. Donahue, on the nature of the situation with the looting in San Francisco and what else you might be doing to help the situation out there?
Yeah, I can talk to both, at least specifically on what the Guard is doing. In terms of the looting and so forth, we've heard the same reports you have, but we have got no National Guardsmen involved in either policing, looting, or do anything in terms of riot control. We do have some select guardsmen, MP types, military police, who are out assisting with traffic control. We've got about 1,500 Army and Air National Guardsmen, all from California, providing air rescue and recovery helicopters, which are typical Air Force type rescue and recovery unit. We've got C-130 cargo airlift airplanes that are already moving into the San Francisco area. In fact, one of them has already moved to Los Alamitos and is bringing up an evacuation hospital to be stationed up at Travis. And then we've got a number of engineer units that are going to come into the area that are heavy engineers. And we've got 2 helicopter units that are moving in. One of them is the 126th Air Ambulance Unit out of the Army Guard in California from Sacramento, coming in with 26 medical evacuation helicopters. And G Company of the 140th Aviation out of Stockton that's coming in with 10 CH-47 utility helicopters that are capable of hauling supplies within the city and so forth.
So obviously your primary concern now is to try to help in the rescue effort, trying to get the injured out and get medical treatment for them.
That's correct. The governor's office in California has ordered the Guard to
in other areas with the Guard, do you anticipate problems, say, with the drinking water, with some water damage, having to get water into people who may not have it, or are you going to help try to restore electricity, that sort of thing?
Well, at this point, the governor's office has asked for the basic life support that we're giving it. At this point, clearly the National Guard has the capability, if the governor's office so decides, to provide water purification. Clearly we have the ground transportation equipment that could move that kind of water and do basically any of the life support functions and sustenance functions that we need within the state, and that's the governor's call completely.
I know this is a bit out of your purview, but there were reports out of San Francisco that the bridge, the Oakland Bay Bridge, that has partially collapsed because of the quake, can be restored in a matter of days by the Army Corps of Engineers, perhaps. Can you explain how that might be done, how the Army could get that bridge back and patched up and able to transport traffic back and forth?
Well, with the disclaimer that I'm not an engineer and I'm not technically qualified, I can tell you the Army engineers have a number of different bridging capabilities that you use in combat that are designed to be put in place very quickly and very effectively and can carry a heavy load. I don't know what the structural damage of the bridge is, and frankly, I'm not qualified to judge it if I did know what it was, but they do have a bridging capability within the American Army that's quite substantial. It can be put in place very, very fast, and it's very, very effective.
All right, from your point of view, Mr. Donahue, how important is it to get that transportation working again on the bridges and the roadways that have collapsed?
I would presume, as in any other city in this country, a major artery in terms of transportation is absolutely essential to cleaning up the ground lines of communication, moving people back and forth, obviously supplies, and rebuilding the area.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Bob Bazell now back with us. Bob, I was looking at the Armenian earthquake, and the Armenian quake, you'll recall, struck in December of 1988. Mr. Gorbachev was in this country, had to fly back quickly because of the disaster. That quake was only a 6.9 on the Richter scale, which was just right in the same area as this quake in San Francisco, 6.97 in San Francisco. 25,000 people died in Armenia, but that was largely because of the construction in Armenia. Most of the buildings in Armenia were unreinforced concrete. Am I not correct?
That's true. As one earthquake specialist told me right after the Armenian earthquake, earthquakes don't kill people, buildings kill people, and I think we're seeing that in San Francisco as well, or at least structures kill people. It's the structures that fail, like that bridge complex coming out of the Bay Bridge, or the other houses that fail occasionally of fire. San Francisco, the wooden structures in San Francisco in the 1906 earthquake survived very well, and I think we saw that today as well. That fire in the Marina District was a fire, as you pointed out, caused by a gas main. But the old San Francisco wooden houses, a lot of them have been around since before the 1906 earthquake, and they do very well. They kind of shake and go with the shaking and the movement of the earthquake. The big question, of course, is the newer buildings, which are unlike Armenia. They are reinforced with a lot of steel beneath the concrete, and so they withstood very well. So building codes, of course, I think will be re-examined again very closely in the wake of this disaster. But I think on the whole, a lot of people are going to say that California has done very well with its building codes, even though there have been a lot of deaths from this earthquake.
Well, I think California has. They've paid an awful lot of attention to the building codes, and certainly new architecture is very well stressed in California. I know in Los Angeles, they've had a program of just getting rid of, either reinforcing or getting rid of all the old buildings of 4 dwelling units or more for a number of years now, and I think the deadline is 1992 in Los Angeles to have every building in the city of more than 4 dwelling units essentially earthquake-proof, as much as you can do that. But in California, the buildings are probably 4 or 5 times stronger than they are on the East Coast because we don't regard earthquakes as a real possibility here, and California's had a lot of experience with them.
Well, that's true, although a lot of people do point out that there's a possibility of earthquakes in many places in the East Coast, and one of the worst earthquakes that ever struck the United States struck in Missouri. So I think that, no place is safe from this, but California earthquakes are a fairly frequent occurrence. And it is interesting to point out that the San Francisco earthquake of today and the Armenian earthquake were almost exactly the same density. Another thing that's interesting when you look at it is the damage does not appear to be close to the epicenter. The damage, the biggest damage seems to be from that bridge collapse in Oakland and in other places in San Francisco. And what happens is that energy radiates up through the soil and oftentimes in funny ways. The Mexico City earthquake, it killed so many people, the epicenter was 300 miles away. So living near a fault or on a fault or that sort of thing is often not exactly the clearest indication of whether you're going to be in trouble if the earthquake does strike.
Bob Bazell, if you'll stand by for just a minute here, we've just made contact with Colonel Bruce Harvey of the Salvation Army in San Francisco, and obviously, Colonel Harvey, you're going to have your hands full.
We already do. We sure do.
Tell us what you're doing.
We are trying to respond immediately to critical areas. We have canteens and volunteers on duty at the site of the Marina fire. That's the big fire that's down along the waterfront area. In Oakland, where the section of the freeway collapsed and there's a very large loss of life, we have a number of people and canteens on duty over there. We're currently bringing in canteens and people from a variety of areas in Northern California, Sacramento, Santa Rosa, and so forth.
Are they able to get in all right?
We can get, the good thing is the Sacramento people and that side can work on the Oakland side, and we can get in. 101 North, coming in from the north across the Golden Gate Bridge is open, so we can get in that way.
You know, that's one of the remarkable things. The Golden Gate Bridge has been open continuously.
That's right.
And it's one of the older bridges in the area, isn't it?
It is, and I'm not sure why. It's possibly just the way this thing hit the community. We have feeding programs going on here in the city. All kinds of things. I can't even repeat them all, but the school system has their people out inspecting schools, and we have them coming to one of our locations to get coffee and sandwiches in that process. We have 2 senior apartment houses that we operate here in downtown San Francisco, and we had to bring all of those people out of the apartments, and we still have no power in this area. We brought those people out. We had food delivered and took care of that. Now we've taken each of those people back into their apartment and helped them sweep up what could be done in the dark and put them to bed. We still are having some difficulty in communicating with Santa Cruz. The power plant at Moss Landing is out of commission, and so there's no power. I got a message finally from our officers in Santa Cruz to say that there's a considerable amount of destruction and damage, and they have a canteen, and they're trying to respond as best they can in that area. We have a camp that is, about 10 miles from Santa Cruz, and we have heard reports from there. Our people have called in, and they've got some very serious damage to our buildings and at the camp. Fortunately, none of our people have been injured, but we have a command center set up here at our divisional headquarters, and we are routing the canteens. We've just been notified that some of our people from as far away as Portland, Oregon, and Los Angeles are on standby, ready to respond if we need them and can use them.
Well, Colonel Harvey, your organization is a remarkable organization, and it's truly remarkable how so many people in a disaster like this do come together to try to help others. I think these disasters do tend to bring out the best in people, don't they?
I think so. I think you'll hear, obviously you'll hear some of the worst in people, but at times like this, we find that people respond very generously, very warmly, and very quickly. And we've got 25 people in this building right now. We can't answer the phone.